moments where they want.
I went to, my grandfather, my mother's father lived in Bryce, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I went there. And I did not get along with they had foster children in their home too. Now this was in 1937, so it was the Depression time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to live with my mother's father and his second wife, because my real grandmother had died. And I did not get along with the foster children, and so they weren't getting any money by taking care of me. So the Lutheran minister in Canal Winchester then lived right across the street from Kramer's. And my uncle was a real good friend of the Lutheran minister. And so they went into the bank and talked to Mr. Kramer and asked him if he and Mrs. Kramer wouldn't like to have a little girl to give a nice Christmas to, because this was close to the first part of December.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, well, I'll just go home and talk it over with my wife. And they were 55 years old and had never had children. Well, they had a stillborn, so they had never had any children. So anyway, my sister then was living with this uncle as their hired girl. And so she took me in the house to the Kramer house. And so Mr. Kramer just scared me to pieces because he was a big man, and he wanted me to sit on his lap. And by being 6 years old and being, everything was strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, my sister stayed with me then for a couple weeks, and she would come and stay with me at nighttime. And
it's okay.
I don't know. Then Mrs. Kramer said, well, we would just take the bus and go to Columbus to Lazarus, because she wanted me to see Santa Claus.
Aww.
So we went to this. I went with her then to Columbus, and I saw a doll baby and I pulled on her coattail and called her Mommy.
Aww.
And she said nobody
Aww.
had ever called her Mommy.
Yes.
So it makes me cry when I think about it.
I understand.
And I had never been to school, because at the children's home, they had a first grade, but it was more like kindergarten stuff. So I was behind, and I was tall for my age, not fat, but tall.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother debated whether I should, take the first grade over again, or what I should do. But by luck, one of the men's wife that worked in the bank with my father, well, I call him my father now.
Sure.
They were getting a new house built, and their apartment lease was up, so they moved in with the Kramers for a couple months Well, and I called them Aunt Dorothy and Uncle Ivan. That's and Aunt Dorothy was pregnant for their baby, and so she was home all the time, and she tutored me and caught me up with the first grade. So I got to stay with children my own age then. So a girl that lived not right across, kind of cattywampus across the street from me. We were the same age, and so we were very close friends. It was nice having a girl right across, close. And my sister would come and, stay with me some, and then Howard, my younger brother, that's 2 years younger than I am, he would come to visit me. He would come at Christmas time, and then in the summertime, Kramer's would take me down to. He lived with my aunt and uncle that lived in Barlow.
Okay.
So I would spend a couple weeks with Howard, so that we, we're still knew each other, and I guess I had a very happy childhood. I had a cat. My mother let me have that cat, and I called her Kitty Sue. And we even let her in the house. I didn't think we'd ever let her in the house, but my mother did, and she'd get under the table, and back then women all wore dresses and hose, and that cat would jump out and put its legs around her legs.
Were you involved in any sports or any after-school activities in high school?
Yes, we had. We didn't have sports then because, you see, it was the war took a lot of the teachers, and so they're just girls. The boys still had their sports, but gasoline was limited, and well, they just didn't have a girls.
So they didn't have any girls' sports?
Well, we had intramural basketball, and I did play basketball, but that was just at noontime. They called it intramural. And the boys that weren't on the basketball team, they they had time that they could play too. They didn't have girls' track. I wasn't a runner anyway, so.
You said you had...
Well, and they had, I belonged to the home ec girls. It was FHA. Instead of FFA, it was FHA. I belonged to that.